Tonight in Your America, President Obama and the Democrats are beginning their push to bring state-run health care to the U.S., but can we afford it, and how far will they go? Now, my next guest says that stopping the administration's plan should be priority number one for the Republican Party. Joining me now, Fox News contributor, the architect, Karl Rove. Karl, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Sean, thanks for having me.
All right, but you wrote a great piece yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. I want to get to that in a minute, but first, Bloomberg reports that the health care cost, the initial, and it's always a rosy projection in the beginning, $600 million in tax increases, $4 billion in tax increases, $400 billion in cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and the Hill reports today that the Democrats want to cook the books. They don't want to use CBO numbers. They want to use OMB numbers. Explain.
Right. Well, the Congressional Budget Office would be an independent check. Traditionally on programs, spending programs by the Congress, the Congressional Budget Office presents a number. The OMB would have every incentive to lowball the number. Their number is significantly less than the number that independent analysts bring to bear on this. This program, if put in place, would cost $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years, according to the administration itself. When we're finished with it, it's actually going to be significantly above that if Congressional Budget Office is allowed to score it.
Well, and Charlie Rangel said it would be more than $1 trillion. They're saying more than $1.5 trillion. Isn't it always the case, or usually the case, that whatever their projection is, it's a rosy scenario?
Well, look, when it comes to health care, that's true. Medicaid and Medicare were both projected to cost significantly less than they ended up costing. The only experience we have with a government health program that costs significantly less than it was originally anticipated is, interestingly enough, the Medicare Prescription Part D program that was enacted by under the previous president with Republican Congress, because it had market forces, it used private insurers, and the program is costing 41% less than projected, even though more seniors signed up for it, and the program has a higher rate of so-called utilization. That means people taking advantage of it. And the reason is because private companies compete. Private companies deliver the benefit. They compete against each other. There are about nearly 100 companies competing against each other. And when you've got that kind of competition, it drives price down, and it drives quality product and range of product up and out. So, this program that Obama is suggesting, is, as you say, state-run or government-run health care that would compete with private companies, and it would absolutely gut the private insurance insurance market in the country and drive us all onto a government plan. 70% by one estimate, 120 million people who today get their coverage from private carriers would find themselves on a government-run program.
Karl, they always try to sort of distance themselves from what they really want. Oh, Barack Obama, I don't want to run a car company. We now own GM. We saw it with Chrysler. I don't want to run the banks. We see their influence in the banks, the financial institutions. Now we've got a compensation czar on top of it. Is it now the same with health care, that they're saying one thing, but they really want a single-payer system?
Sure. In fact, what's interesting, I read the transcript of President Obama's appearance in Green Bay, and a person gets up and says to the president, now, I'm in favor of a single-payer system, a woman at the very beginning of the program. And to read the president's sort of, weird circumlocutions to sort of basically say, I'm in favor of one too, but we can't get there directly, and we've got to do it incrementally, and we've got to do this and that. But look, the bottom line is, if you have the government go in and do this, and let's look at Medicare and Medicaid. Medicare pays hospitals 71% of what private insurers pay. They pay doctors 81% of what private insurers pay. The difference between what that Medicare benefit or service cost and what they're paying, that gap is picked up by the taxpayer through a subsidy, or it's picked up by people who use the healthcare system and aren't part of Medicare. And that's how they will compete. They will basically set a price, fix the price, and they will then have the rest of us subsidize it, those of us that are left in the private side of it, and it will absolutely collapse. Once that private insurance market goes away, you take 70% of the customers of the private insurance market away, and the private insurance market collapses.
Well, those were two of the first points you made in your piece yesterday in the Wall Street Journal. Number one, that it's not necessary, and secondly, if in fact you have a public option, it will undercut the ability to have private insurance, which you point out there are already, 1,300 competitors out there.
Yeah, 1,300 companies provide private insurance. Now, you know, look, we all have a beef with our insurance company. I went to the doctor today, and I got a beef with my insurance company. But imagine this. What happens, at least that we've got competitive pressure. My insurance company knows if I don't like them and I get fed up enough, I can go find somebody else. What happens if the government is the only insurance company or the dominant insurance company around, and they're right in the middle of your relationship with your doctor? That gets an enormous, you know, loss of freedom for the individual, and the government doesn't need to be responsive. I mean, it's like, look, you know, it's why we've got such lousy service from government monopolies. I mean, it wasn't the government that came up with Federal Express idea of moving packages around by air.
Yeah.
It was a private company.
You know, Carl, one of the things, I read a lot of papers in Great Britain and Canada, and I've tried to bring these stories to radio and TV over the years, and that is, you know, for example, I use Great Britain. Their government rationing body recently decided that women with advanced breast cancer cannot get the medicines that they need that potentially would save their lives. That's a death sentence. It seems that governments always overpromise. They want to take away everybody's fears. So my question is, and this was the headline, how to stop this healthcare system. How do Republicans stop this with the numbers favoring the Democrats as they do the current configuration in Congress?
Yeah, well, just remember, there are a lot of Democrats in Congress who are dubious of a government-run health care program as well. And so we need to, this is a bipartisan effort, and we need to get doctors and patients and families and small businesses, the kind of people who would be hurt by a government-run health care system, and make their voices heard. I've got to tell you, it was really unusual. I get a lot of email in response to some of my columns. In response to this one, I got a lot of email, and a lot of it was very thoughtful and very powerful testimonies from people in the healthcare field about how much they feared how government-run healthcare would interfere with their relationship with their patients. And I mean, it was powerful. And if that kind of energy can be channeled to letting members of Congress hear, there are a lot of, you know, moderate and blue dog and new Democrat, business-oriented Democrats who are very nervous about the idea of collapsing the private insurance market and are very concerned about a reform package that includes the so-called public option, which, as you say, is really state-run.
Yeah, well, the AMA has come out against it. The only thing I'd urge every American to understand is this has been tried. This has failed every place it's been tried. You're going to have rationing. People are not going to go into the medical field. Our advancements are going to stop. You're not going to be able to choose your doctors in the end, and the government's going to dictate what you can and cannot do. We're going to lose the best healthcare system in the world.
That's right. We have two ways to control costs. We have market forces, or we have government dictates. And every place the government dictates have been used to control health care costs, from Canada to Britain across Europe, it has been an utter unmitigated disaster over the long haul.
All right. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it. Thanks, Carl Rove.